change to foreign policy, specifically Israel. We'll start with you, Mr. Cooper. How do you feel about how Israel is conducting its war against Hamas in Gaza, and should funding for Israel be tied to how Israel conducts itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really appreciate that you asked that. Israel, just like everybody else in every region in the world, should be responsible for defending themselves. I said this over and over and over again, that America isn't responsible for the blood and treasure that is spent all over the world. Would I say that we should tie funds to Israel based on how Israel acts? No, I don't. I think that Israel is responsible for defending themselves, and we don't have a say in how that's done. But I would also say that we don't have a responsibility anywhere in the world to be sending our own blood and treasure. I'm a Marine and I've served all over the world, and I can tell you, and I'm sure Dr. Jasser will tell you the same thing, none of us will wish for our own brothers and sisters to be sent into harm's way under almost any circumstances. And there are way too many problems at home for us to be sending money anywhere else in the world.
Mr. Davison, your thoughts on how Israel is conducting its war?
Well, there you see the vicissitudinous disposition of my opponent. He changed his position on the wars. I'm talking about Cooper. He was talking about supporting Ukraine a few months ago at a debate, and now he's talking about that we shouldn't send it out.
That's just not true.
Well, it is true. I got it on video.
Let him finish.
on video.
No, you're not going to do.
Mr. Cooper,
It's on video.
let him finish a minute,
and I'll share it
respond.
on my website.
Well, I really don't like people slandering me.
Yeah, it's not slander.
TV.
It's the truth.
But
it's
it's
on
not the
video.
truth.
It's on PBS. He said that
go watch
he called Ukraine allies, and he said that we can't cut off funding immediately, and he said he wanted to continue funding them. That was the truth. I'm not going to tell a lie on the man. It's on video.
Your thoughts on how Israel is conducting its war?
Israel is conducting the war as they should. Israel has the right to protect themselves, and I believe America should stand beside them just in case they need our assistance. I believe in America first, but Israel is our ally and not Ukraine. Ukraine isn't our ally, but Israel is our ally, and they should defend themselves, especially now that Iran is attacking them and they need our support. They have been a steadfast brother of ours supporting us, and we need to support them in such a time as this.
We'll allow you to respond, and we'll get to you too. Back on Israel, your thoughts. Did you shift your position on Ukraine?
No, my position has never changed. I don't believe that we should send blood and treasure anywhere else in the world. What I said on PBS, and I'll repeat it today, we cannot abandon our friends and allies on the world stage. Isolationism is not an answer to world politics. America, as I said on PBS, has the responsibility of being a world superpower. That means that we have to flex our influence to make regional powers be in control of regional wars and be responsible for the blood and treasures that are spent in regional conflicts. That does not mean that America is responsible for that. America has the responsibility of flexing the leverage of having those people in those regions handle that.
We will get through Israel before we come back to Ukraine. Dr. Giles, your thoughts on how Israel's conducting its war?
Well, it's Israel. They are God's chosen people. We don't curse them. We don't cause them harm. We help them when we can. Even when you talk about, I've already stated, we should stop sending our monies to overseas to countries that hate us, but Israel's not one that hates us. And if we did stop sending money to Israel, there's enough people here who will send donations directly to Israel, and guess what? They'll get the government out of the way, and they'll be better off for it. So, as far as how they're conducting the war, what was it, a couple months back, when Iran shot 350 missiles, drones, or something into Israel? How do you think it would happen if Israel shot 350 drones and missiles into Tehran?
Dr. Jasser, how was your thoughts on how Israel's conducting its war?
Yeah, I'm actually so glad to hear Mr. Cooper's description, because I want the voters to really go back and listen to that, because ultimately he just doesn't get it. Israel was attacked on October 7, which none of my colleagues here on the stage have mentioned, October 7, where it was equivalent to 50 to 100 times 9/11. And ultimately, genocidal Hamas soldiers went across the border into Israel and slaughtered and beheaded children, infants, elderly, and others. This was a horrific act of war, and what they're doing now is ultimately finally defeating Hamas. This is a just war, no different than our war was just when we went to Afghanistan to defeat the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So ultimately, this is about anti-Semitism. It's about context. My colleagues can't seem to articulate and understand what's happening, why the West is at stake. Israel is a little America in the Middle East surrounded by enemies. And if we're going to continue to have people, and what you're seeing here is just more Greg Stantons. Greg Stanton can't seem to articulate what is at stake and why Israel needs to be defended, just sits on his hands as he's being protested by the radicalized fringe of his party. And yet we need to defend Israel because they stand against anti-Semitism, and the anti-Semitism we see across campuses has been funded by Qatar, by China, and all of our enemies. So this is an existential crisis that we're feeling right now, and we need to be leaders in that, not just simply say nothing is important.
Let's move to Ukraine as you wish to do, and a question on it. Would you have voted to keep Speaker Johnson? The battle on that was partially funding the war in Ukraine. How do you feel about our funding in Ukraine? Do you support Speaker Johnson in that effort?
Well, absolutely. I want to get to that question, but first I want to address Dr. Jasser's. Dr. Jasser seems to think that all of America is under attack by radical Muslims. We're not concerned about radical Muslims. We're concerned about radical Democrats and radical Democrat policies that are destroying this country. And let me tell you this. America is not concerned about radical Muslims on our country because we have the Second Amendment that will deal with that. Wow. But we are worried about the Democrat policies that are destroying this country. Now, would I vote for Speaker Johnson? I would have voted to get him out of there because he turned his back on America and he funded not only the Ukraine war when he said he wouldn't, but he funded abortion up to birth, and that's why he needed to be gone.
Let's forget Ukraine for a second. He said that radical Democrats are more dangerous to this country than radical Muslims. Your thoughts, Mr. Jazz?
The radicalization process is similar, and for him to separate this out bespeaks to a basic misunderstanding of what's happening to our children across campuses. They're waving flags about Palestine. They don't even know where Gaza is on a map. But yet ultimately, the movement is a neo-Marxist jihadist sort of amalgam of radicalization, which is very similar. Why? Because the DEI wokeness, the CRT, critical race theory wokeness that created the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements that he's trying to talk about, that destroyed many cities and so many businesses, is about a destruction of the foundations of America. And the Islamists join them in that. There's a red-green axis of the far left and the Islamists working together, just like in the UN, the Irans of the world work with the Chinas. The radical Islamists, which is a quarter of the world's population, also work with the radical far-left progressivists. That is what we're seeing in campuses and what my friend Jerome Davison was trying to articulate. But this is why we need people. We need people in Congress that get it and can hit the ground running to take this on. And I can be an antidote to the Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omars on day one.
About a minute. That's how much everyone's about getting for their reply, and I'm tracking it.
Yes.
Mr. Davison, he invoked your name. You get about a minute.
Okay, let me just say, Jerome Davison for Congress, you need somebody like me who knows what's going on. The radical Muslim movement, that Palestinian thing just happened. But what has been taking place in our country and in our schools and at our border has been Democrat policy. He's just said it again. And then he threw in the Islamic stuff with the Palestine movement. We are facing radicalized Democrats, and they need to be removed, along with Greg Stanton, who is supporting it 100%. It is the Democrat policies that is the danger to this country. I know what's going on, and I have articulated this point, and that's why he stole my point. And he continues to do that. But I'm Jerome Davison for Congress, and support me. I will fight for you.
I'll let you weigh in on Ukraine or the radicalization of Democrats and or Muslim.
I spent 22 years in Saudi Arabia living and working there, so I know a little bit about the Islamic faith. It's inconsistent with our Constitution. That's all. I'll leave it at that. Let you guys look around and find out what it is. But as far as the funding of Ukraine, Johnson's done a couple of other things that have gotten me and probably all of the people come together. He did not provide the funding bills that he promised to do. He went with a bill, continuing resolution. Wrong. At that point, he should be taken out. However, it would hurt our country to do that at this point. We need to be unified together and look at America first and get Congress together to make these funding bills and do their job. That's what they're there. That's the first thing that they're supposed to do.
Let's
And not fund what's not in here.
the prop again. Let's get local.